and welcome to Finextra TV. I'm Hannah Wallace and we're here at Cybos 2019 in London. Kindly joining me now to talk about instant payments and open banking is Alistair Brown, Global Head of Payments for EPAM. Hello Alistair, it's lovely to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Now, yes, we're talking about open banking and instant payments, which was the topic of the roundtable you've just come out of. These are two areas that banks have been heavily investing in. Could you tell us how can they take real advantage of them and make revenue?
So there have been many strides taken already in open banking. It's controversial, it's difficult, it's the implementation across 28 EU member states of a very difficult piece of legislation, which is only partially understood in my humble opinion. And I think it's going to take a while for the true value to come from that. Instant payments has always been a separate area. These are two very monolithic areas addressed differently by different sets of people, albeit often under the same roof. The fact is that there's lots of to and fro that can happen between those two in the fullness of time. I think we need to formulate an ecosystem that brings the whole lot together. That's a ways away yet.
It sounds like it would be wise for banks to view these initiatives collectively.
Yes.
What would be your thoughts on their strategy going forward?
This is going to be monumentally complicated and very difficult to organise, so let's not hold our breath. A lot of organisational change will be necessary to get a real grip on this thing. The fact is the day job, business as usual, advancing in those two separate areas is already more than enough for the organisations involved in it. There's yet more to come at a later date, one imagines, whereby with yet another, even more finely honed organisation, we can get a grip on the combination effect that instant payments, open banking could have between them amongst themselves, collectively looking forward.
And now there's no doubt banks are increasingly looking to develop their ecosystems and collaborate, but what's the right mix of these two so it's successful for everybody?
So I think we've come a long way in the last 3 or 4 years already. There's a tradition of standoffishness between the established financial institutions and the experimental organisations, call them fintechs, what you will. That's broken down into a much fuller collaboration these days, and it's much more exciting, it's much healthier, it produces better results. And I think there's a general understanding that the financial institutions moving forward now are using the fintechs just as the next step in a very, very long evolution. And that's all good. And that means that effectively they're experimenting with what that ecosystem can look like in order to get this stuff done. So if we look further out 3, 5, 7 years from now, I think that collaboration will enable a better relationship between instant payments and open banking. But neither of those two things in themselves are complete yet. So it's highly likely that the idea of the one feeding off the other in any more mature fashion will have to come later. And therefore the ecosystem that would breed that may not yet exist. But I think we're moving towards it, and quite rapidly. What is interesting is that if regulatory change is forcing the pace in Europe, which it is, with all the errors and successes that's produced, the Americans and the Asia-Pacific people can look at all of this stuff and say, okay, what went wrong? What should we avoid? Where are the bear traps? Where did it go really well? Cherry pick the best bits and optimize that, copy it, optimize it. That will create better ecosystems, and I think we're on the way there.
Okay, it sounds like they would do well to look at these two initiatives collectively. What are your thoughts here, and what strategy would you advise banks to take going forward? So
the time and energy absorbed by the work already underway in open banking and instant payments separately as two entirely different worlds is already taking so much time that frankly the formulation of a new approach is going to have to wait a little bit. I have no doubt that there will be some accidental emergent strategies that arise out of the work that's being done. And already I can see the top edge of some of that happening. And it's very exciting, but there's no doubt that the fuller flow of information, dialogue and technological and business model change that ought to happen and could indeed come from those two areas, it's huge. It is huge because big mistakes have been made. A lot of technologies are heavily out of date. The modernization of them will be incremental, painful, expensive, and frequently wrong, frankly. And despite all of that experimentation, I think we will get to a place where a strategy emerges and then can be reformulated even more strongly in order to do it properly. It'll take a time.
I think it's safe to say watch this space then.
Absolutely.
Alistair, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your insights.
Thank you.